A Passage to India, Chapter 3, Part 2. No, really, not in this country. It's not done. There's the danger from snakes, for one thing. They are apt to lie out in the evening. Ah, yes, so the young man there said. This sounds very romantic, said Miss Quested, who was exceedingly fond of Mrs. Moore and was glad she should have had this little escapade. You meet a young man in a mosque and then never let me know? I was going to tell you, Adela, but something changed the conversation and I forgot. My memory grows deplorable. Was he nice? She paused, then said emphatically, Very nice. Who was he? Ronnie inquired. A doctor. I don't know his name. A doctor? I know of no young doctor in Chandapur. How odd. What was he like? Rather small, with a little mustache and quick eyes. He called out to me when I was in the dark part of the mosque about my shoes. That was how he began talking. He was afraid I had them on, but I remembered luckily. He told me about his children, and then we walked back to the club. He knows you well. I wish you'd pointed him out to me. I can't make out who he is. He didn't come in the club. He said he wasn't allowed to. Thereupon, the truth struck him, and he cried out, Oh, good gracious! Not a Mohammedan! Why ever didn't you tell me you'd been talking to a native? I was going all wrong. A Mohammedan? How perfectly magnificent! Exclaimed Miss Quested. Ronnie, isn't that like your mother? While we talk about seeing the real India, she goes and sees it, and then forgets she's seen it. But Ronnie was ruffled. From his mother's description, he had thought the doctor might be young Muggins from over the Ganges, and it brought out all the camaraderie emotions. What a mix up! Why hadn't she indicated by the tone of her voice that she was talking about an Indian? Scratchy and dictatorial, he began to question her. He called to you in the mosque, did he? How? Impudently? What was he doing there himself at that time of night? No, it's not their prayer time. This in answer to a suggestion of Miss Quested's, who showed the keenest interest. So he called to you over your shoes? Then it was impudence. It's an old trick. I wish you had had them on. I think it was impudence, but I don't know about a trick, said Mrs. Moore. His nerves were all on edge, and I could tell from his voice. As soon as I answered, he altered. You oughtn't to have answered. Now look here, said the logical girl. Wouldn't you expect a Mohammedan to answer if you asked him to take off his hat in the church? It's different. It's different. You don't understand. I know I don't, and I want to. What is the difference, please? He wished she wouldn't interfere. His mother did not signify. She was just a globetrotter, a temporary escort, who could retire to England with what impressions she chose. But Adela, who meditated spending her life in the country, was a more serious matter. It would be tiresome if she started crooked over the native question. Pulling up the mare, he said, There's your Ganges. Their attention was diverted. Below them a radiance had suddenly appeared. It belonged neither to water nor the moonlight, but stood like a luminous sheaf upon the fields of darkness. He told them that it was where the new sandbank was forming, and that the dark raveled bit at the top was the sand, and that the dead bodies floated down the way from Benares, or would if the crocodiles let them. It's not much of a dead body that gets down to Chandapur. Crocodiles down in it too? How terrible, his mother murmured. The young people glanced at each other and smiled. It amused them that the old lady got those gentle creeps. The harmony was restored between them consequently. She continued, What a terrible river! What a wonderful river! and sighed. The radiance was already altering, whether through shifting of the moon or of the sand. Soon the bright sheaf would be gone, and the circlet itself to alter, be blemished upon the streaming void. The women discussed whether they would wait for the changes or not, while the silence broke into patches of unquietness, and the Mar shivered. On her account, they did not wait, but drove on to the city magistrate's bungalow, where Miss Quested went to bed, and Mrs. Moore had a short interview with her son. He wanted to inquire about the Mohammedan doctor in the mosque. It was his duty to report suspicious characters, and conceivably it was some disreputable hakim who had prowled up from the bazaar. When she told him that it was someone connected with the Minto hospital, he was relieved, and said that the fellow's name must be Aziz, and that he was quite all right. Nothing against him at all. Aziz, what a charming name. So you and he had a talk. Did you gather he was well disposed? Ignorant of the force of this question, she replied, Yes, quite after the first moment. I meant generally. Did he seem to tolerate us? The brutal conqueror, the sun-dried bureaucrat, that sort of thing. Oh, yes, I think so. Except the calendars. He doesn't care for the calendars at all. Oh, so he told you that, did he? The major will be interested. I wonder what was the aim of the remark. Ronnie, you're never going to pass it on to Major Calendar. Yes, rather. I must, in fact. But my dear boy, if the major heard I was disliked by any native subordinate of mine, I should expect him to pass it on to me. But my dear boy, a private conversation. Nothing's private in India. Aziz knew that when he spoke out, so don't you worry. He had some motive in what he said. My personal belief is that the remark wasn't true. How not true? He abused the major in order to impress you. I don't know what you mean, dear. It's the educated natives' latest dodge. They used to cringe, but the younger generation believe in a show of manly independence. They think it will pay better with the itinerant MP, but whether the native swaggers or cringes, there's always something behind every remark he makes, always something. And if nothing else, he's trying to increase his itzat, in plain Anglo-Saxon, to score. Of course, there are exceptions. You never used to judge people like this at home. India isn't home, he retorted rather rudely. But in order to silence her, he had been using phrases and arguments that he had picked up from older officials, and he did not feel quite sure of himself. When he said, Of course there are exceptions, he was quoting Mr. Turton, while increasing the itzat was Major Calendar's own. The phrases worked and were in current use at the club, but she was rather clever at detecting the first from the second hand, and might press him for definite examples. She only said, I can't deny that what you say sounds very sensible, but you really must not hand on to Major Calendar anything I told you about Dr. Aziz. He felt disloyal to his caste, but he promised, adding, In return, please don't talk about Aziz to Adela. Not talk about him? Why? There you go again, Mother. I really can't explain everything. I don't want Adela to be worried. That's the fact. She'll begin wondering whether we treat the natives properly, and all that sort of nonsense. But she came out to be worried. That's exactly why she's here. She discussed it all on the boat. We had a long talk when we went on the shore at Aden. She knows you in play, as she put it, but not in work, and she felt she must come and look round before she decided, and before you decided. She is very, very fair-minded. I know, he said dejectedly. The note of anxiety in his voice made her feel that he was still a little boy, who must have what he liked. So she promised to do as he wished, and they kissed good night. He had not forbidden her to think about Aziz, however, and she did this when she retired to her room. In the light of her son's comment, she reconsidered the scene at the mosque to see whose impression was correct. Yes, it could be worked into quite an unpleasant scene. The doctor had begun by bullying her, had said Mrs. Callender was nice, and then, finding the ground safe, had changed. He had alternately whined over his grievances and patronized her, and had run a dozen ways in a single sentence, had been unreliable, inquisitive, vain. Yes, it was all true, but how false as a summary of the man. The essential life of him had been slain. Going to hang up her cloak, she found that the tip of the peg was occupied by a small wasp. She had known this wasp or its relatives by day. They were not as English wasps, but had long yellow legs which hung down behind them when they flew. Perhaps he mistook the peg for a branch. No Indian animal has any sense of an interior. Bats, rats, birds, insects will as soon nest inside a house as out. It is to them a normal growth of the eternal jungle, which alternately produces houses, trees, houses, trees. There he clung asleep, while jackals in the plain bayed their desires and mingled with the percussions of drums. "Pretty dear," said Mrs. Moore to the wasp. He did not wake, but her voice floated out to swell the night's uneasiness. And we'll go on with Chapter 4 in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. I hope you like the book. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.